I see quite often in our finance practice that young couples are coming to us to get a mortgage. They're buying their first house. They're all starry-eyed, and they're in love forever. And unfortunately, as you know, the statistics aren't necessarily in their favor. And so gently, I try to bring up the concept of a cohabitation agreement. In particular, it usually tends to be, I don't know why the stats on my business are this way, but the lady of the relationship tends to have a great job, saved up a ton of down payment, and then there's a gentleman that comes along and has maybe bad credit or no job, and so I see, in particular, this has happened many times in my practice where the lady's putting in hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then several years later they end up splitting up, and then that person loses all that down payment.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
So it's not. I appreciate that you're seeing this often in the context you're referring to, but of course it goes both ways.
It does.
And it can 100%. Be same-sex couples as well, right? That that you have these kinds of experiences. And the reality is that if you're getting into a relationship and you're not really starting out from the same place, whatever that is, right? It's really a good idea to talk to somebody about whether or not you want to have an agreement. And it's not just married couples either; it's unmarried couples as well, right? Because there are obligations. They're just not as clear cut, shall we say, with the unmarried spouses. So I really, I would encourage people to think about cohabitation agreements or marriage contracts. I just recently did an article on that, actually, just saying, hey, let's get some of these myths about cohabitation or marriage contracts out of the way, because they really are a good thing.
Yeah. What are
from
some
my
of those
perspective?
myths?
Say it again.
What are some of those myths that?
Well, I mean, for example. If you're asking me to do this, you don't love me. Well, of course, in fact, I would say the opposite, right? One of the biggest things that people fight about is finances, right? And particularly if you're coming at it with, with varying
degrees.
Degrees of capacity, if I can call it that, right? Financial capacity, right? We're just having one right now. I've got a client who's the son of a very successful businessman. Dad has allowed his children to participate in the business. They do very well, thank you very much. But everything is owned by Dad. Dad is getting to that point where it's time to think about, what am I doing next?
Right.
And so what's that succession look like? And Dad's saying, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm not giving you these shares unless, you have something in place that protects me from being, having your partner come after me or come looking to me for my business.
Right.
To get paid out because,
or sit at the table.
Right. And of course, the thing that people don't understand is that separation occurs in every situation because separation also occurs on death, right? And so it's not just voluntary, right? And so there's always going to be a separation in a relationship, right, of one sort or another. And so we have to think about that, right? And so we're just, we're having a discussion right now between the wife, the new wife, and this young fellow who's saying, I'd like to be able to get, some interest in this business, and Dad's saying, not unless you have something in place. Thanks very much.
Unless you earn in.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs come along, and I'm sure there's 1,000 ways to structure things. Was almost creating a line in the sand and saying, here's what my assets are today, things we grow together, honey. We'll share, but this historical money, this money coming from my dad or my mom it's compartmentalized, so they can share in growing together as a couple, but still protecting those assets.
That's often, and in fact, the law recognizes that if you're married, right, in that, you get a deduction for what you bring in.
Okay.
So if you start a relationship and you're married, and you then separate, and we're talking about, okay, so what are we dividing? We're dividing what you acquired during the course of the marriage. Right. There are exceptions, and there are fairly major exceptions, so nobody should just take what I'm saying just, off the cuff. It's really something you need to talk to somebody about. But the reality is that the law recognizes that for married couples.
Right.
Much different situation for unmarried couples, where it isn't so straightforward.